Hi everyone, and welcome to our next pre-recorded lesson for GL assessment. We're going to be working through lesson 7 content today, and we're going to be focusing obviously on block 5, and hopefully if you're in year 5 you're watching this video, this pre-recorded video. Obviously the advantage of these pre-recorded videos is you can stop them, you can pause them at any time. If you're not able to join our live lessons, then hopefully this is the perfect solution for you. Very much looking forward to working through the content with you. Just a couple of little changes that you might see during this video. Usually you will have me in the bottom right hand corner, but you will predominantly see Billy the bookworm today, and he's there because hopefully it won't distract you and it will keep you on task. At any opportunity during the lesson for any of the activities, if you need to pause it and listen to the instructions and then have a go, then please do. Looking forward to starting with you. So let's have a little look at the first slide. And the first thing we're actually going to begin with today is a spelling test. So hopefully you're ready for that. We're going to be testing you on the test 3 words, which are all antonyms. The main part of the lesson, we're actually going to be focusing on literacy devices. So we're going to be looking at alliterations, onomatopoeias. We're going to look at some imagery around similes, metaphors, and also, if we've got time at the end, we will also do abbreviations and acronyms. So very much looking forward to doing all these different things with you. But as I mentioned earlier, we are going to start with a spelling test. So make sure you've got your spelling book out ready, and then I'm going to read out the words for you. So if you do want to pause the video to collect what you need, then please do. I know our tutors are desperate to give you tokens for your spelling results, so hopefully you'll be able to get 10 out of 10. Question 1. Write the word squander. Write the word squander. So squander means to waste. So if you waste money or time. Next one is hoard. Hoard. I will read these all back at the end, so if you do miss any. Number 3, transparent. Transparent. You might have learnt about that in your science lessons. Write the word transparent. So it's see-through, it's transparent. Number 4, would like you to write the word opaque. Opaque, which is the opposite of transparent. You can't see through it. Number 5, would like you to write the word loiter. If you loiter, you sort of go slowly. If you walk along loitering, you're not moving very quickly to loiter. And the opposite of loiter, for question 6, is hasten. Write hasten. Number 7, next word, one of your longest words this week, industrious. So if you're hard working, you're industrious. Number 8 is lazy, meaning idle, lazy. And we've only got 2 left. Number 9, would like you to write the word abundant. Abundant, and that means plentiful, to have a lot, an abundant amount. I always think about the word bun in that word. And the last one is scarce. Scarce. Not having very much. That's number 10. So I'm going to read them down through just in case you did miss any. Squander, hoard, transparent, opaque, loiter, hasten, industrious, lazy, abundant, and scarce. Guys, hopefully you were able to do well with your spellings. Would certainly suggest that you learn the next set of words for the following week. If you did get any wrong, then it certainly is worth trying to check what those spellings were. But also, just as important, of course, is the meanings. So just going to reveal those words to you now. There they are. Also got the word and meaning book here. So just in case there are any words that you didn't know, it's a really good idea to record those ones down. So we've got squander, hoard, transparent, opaque, loiter, hasten, industrious, lazy, abundant, and scarce. So hopefully you've done well with those spellings, and as I said earlier, desperate to give you lots of Teach It Right tokens when we see you again, but you will have to prove it. Okay, let's move on to the main part of the lesson. So we are going to be focusing on key terms, key literacy devices. These often come up in comprehension activities, and they are really important that we do know them. So we've got them listed down here: alliteration, onomatopoeia, abbreviation, acronym, simile, and metaphor. Now what we would suggest here is you write a quick little definition down on a piece of paper, and you just write down what you think each of those words means, but also giving an example of each one as well. So can you think of an example for each of those keywords? And then what we're going to do at the end, you can check back and see whether you were in agreement, because we're going to deal with each of these individual terms, and hopefully by the end of the lesson you will have a better understanding of them all. So just to point out in terms of what book you're going to need to have out, you're going to need to have this 11 Plus English CGP book, and it should be the ages 10 to 11 book. Also recommend you've got a sharp pencil and a rubber, and you'll be ready to start. So if you do need to pause the video to find this book, this would be a good opportunity, and then we will make a start. So let's move on to the first thing we're going to look at, and this is going to be on page 20 in your CGP English book, and we're going to be looking at alliterations and onomatopoeias. So let's have a look first of all at alliterations. This is the first thing we're going to look at. So what is an alliteration? Well, an alliteration is a series of words that have the same sound at the beginning. Now I think it's important to recognise that we need to find the same sound. It doesn't always mean that the letters will necessarily be the same. Most of the time they are, but not all the time. There are other words where there are silent letters at the beginning where we still get the same sound by blending those words together to be an alliteration. There is a brilliant video on the BBC website which goes through all the different types of alliteration, so it is certainly worth having a look at that video. So this is the first page on page 20. Now would be a good opportunity to just pause the video. You have to underline all of the words that form the alliteration. And what we've done, we've actually highlighted the part of the word where it is an alliterate device. Let's have a little look. So there we go, got all of them highlighted. So those words that are highlighted hopefully are the ones that you've been underlining. So on the first one we've got giant jumped giraffe's jaws, and the sound is a J sound in that first one. Grasped is not part of the alliteration because it starts with a G sound. So that's why we haven't included that word. So do be careful on these. Just because it begins with the same letter doesn't always mean that we're going to get the same sound. But it was the J sound that we needed on those alliterations. Number 2, Zahira fanned the flames furiously as she fought to phone the fireman. Now, I think certainly with these alliterations, they're a bit like tongue twisters sometimes, aren't they? And you can sometimes fall over the words a little bit. But interesting on this one, all of them do begin with an F, but we haven't included phone. But we should have included phone because, of course, if you think about it, PH is also an F sound, isn't it, of course? So we should have really included phone. So apologies about that. We need to get the highlighter, and we really should give that one a little bit of a highlight. So let's have a look at the next one. The king crept behind the dusty curtains, which caused him to choke. So on this one, the C sound is used to form the alliteration. King has a C sound at the beginning, so is part of the alliteration, but choke, because it's got a CH sound, that's not included. Number 4, pony prance played prank. We've got the P sound is used to form the alliteration here. Phantom, though, is not part of the alliteration because it starts with a softer PH sound. Phantom. Yeah, so we haven't included that, but we have included pony pranced, played and pranked. 5, we've got Hannah hoped that Henry would be home at hour late. Now, interestingly with this, because we've got the H sound, those are all the words that we needed. Hannah hoped Henry home is the alliteration. But obviously hadn't included hour because that's not part of the alliteration because the H is silent. So we should have known that for hour. We don't hear that. It's a silent H at the beginning. Veronica knew that she had nearly knocked over the new fence. So in this one we need knew, nearly, knocked and knew. Knocked and knew have a silent K at the beginning, so they are part of the alliteration. Question 7. We've got the W sound is used to form the alliteration here. So we've got Wendy watch while wacky wigs are the words that we should have included. And writers is not part of the alliteration because the W is silent. So in actual fact, interestingly, we need to delete that one. We shouldn't have included writers there. Question 8, graciously guarded, grand, glorious garden. So we've got the G sound is used to form the alliteration, but gnome is not part of the alliteration because, of course, it has a silent G at the beginning. And the last one, robber raided, wrong room, wrestled. The R is used to form the alliteration here. Wrong and wrestled have a silent W at the beginning, so they are part of the alliteration. So, I hope you managed to do well on those. It's all about the sounds, and hopefully you got 9 out of 9 on those. We're now going to move on to onomatopoeias, and as I said earlier, very good idea to have a look at the BBC website here because there's some brilliant links about onomatopoeias and a nice little video you can watch as well. So what do we need to do here? Well, we need to underline the onomatopoeic word. So the word that makes a sound. So if you think of words like thud and crash, and they've given a lovely example here. The sausages were slowly sizzling in the pan as I threw the egg away. So an onomatopoeia is a word that means a different sound that you might get. I certainly remember watching a lot of Batman cartoons when I was younger and seeing things like pow and thud and all those words coming out of those cartoons, and a lot of those were onomatopoeic. So you're on page 20 still, and hopefully you've managed to find all of those different ones. We've got rustle, hissing, banged, wheezing, tooted, whizzed, fizzed, yelped, and crackling. So look for the words that imitate the sound of the action or the object. So well done if you managed to spot all of those onomatopoeic words. Fantastic. Well done. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on now and have a look at the next part of our lesson, which is on page 21. And this is imagery. So again, maybe a good idea to pause your video at this stage. Make sure you find the right page, page 21. But we are focusing on imagery. And the main thing we're going to be focusing on here are metaphors, a simile, or personification. So maybe your definitions now that you did at the beginning of the lesson, you can certainly look back at. So what's some of the differences between these keywords? Well, let's focus on metaphor first of all. A metaphor is when you describe something as being exactly like that. So if I was to say to you, the moon is a gold coin, then that would be a metaphor. So the example we've got here is also a metaphor. Susan was a monkey as she clambered up the tree. So Susan was a monkey, describing her directly to a monkey. That makes it metaphoric. A simile, however, uses words like and as. So if I said the grass was as green as emeralds, then that would be a simile because I'm using the word as. And you can also use the word like as well. So that can be a good clue when you're looking through this particular section. If you see the word like and as used, it's probably going to be a simile. Personification, this is where we give human characteristics to kind of inanimate objects. So if I said the wind whistled, well, that would be a personification because the wind doesn't really whistle. So it's kind of giving human traits to inanimate objects. And we'll have a look at some examples of personification in this particular exercise as well. So what we'd ask you to do is on each sentence, you need to write down, is it a metaphor? Is it a simile? Is it personification? And then we'll be able to have a look down through. So good idea to pause the video at this stage, and then we'll go down through and tell you what each of those are. So here we are. Now we've been a little bit lazy. We've ended up putting P, M or S. So P for personification, M for metaphor, and then S for simile. So the first one, the sun smiled down on the holidaymakers basking below. Well, of course, the sun doesn't really smile down. So that's an example of personification. His teacher was a bitter woman. Now remember, if we're comparing it directly, okay, and then we've also mentioned here she had a heart of pure ice. So again, that must be metaphoric. So this is a metaphor because her heart is described as being made of ice. So that's a metaphor. And then we've got Gioni's grandfather was a wise old owl perched in his chair. Well, this is another example of a metaphor because his grandfather is described as being an owl. So again, as you go down through, you can give them a tick. We've got now a bit of personification. The newspaper's headlines screamed robbery. Well, of course, when we think of headlines screaming, they don't really scream. So that's personification used there, okay, because newspapers screamed like the people, okay. Number 5 here, we've got a simile. And the reason we can sort of guess that, we were talking earlier about looking out for like and as. The angry man stomped across the room like an elephant. So that's an example of a simile. Number 6, the footballer was a streak of lightning as he raced to the goal. Well, in this one, it's a metaphor because the footballer is described as being a streak of lightning. So that's metaphoric. And then we've got the moonlight danced on the waves, causing the spray to shimmer. Well, on this particular one, because the moonlight danced like a person, then that's an example of personification. Hopefully you're doing well with these and you're able to spot all of the different links. And then we've got 8. This is a metaphor because the snow is described as being a blanket. Was a blanket. White blanket. Then we've got last simile. The Christmas lights were as, oh, that gives me a clue, that's probably a simile, as bright as diamonds. Oh, that's nice. So, hopefully you got 9 out of 9 on that one, and hopefully you understood the difference now between metaphor, simile and personification. If you didn't, then maybe have a look back at your definitions and have a think about what the differences are between those literacy devices. We're going to move on now to the next part. Now, this is actually where you need to get really creative because you need to complete these similes and metaphors using a suitable word or phrase. And obviously there's lots of examples. So this one, as a simile, the lorry was as slow as a snail. So use your imagination for these as it suggests in the hint, and you can have a go at filling those in. Do maybe take a picture of it, put it in our Facebook group. We would love to see what you have come up with for your own similes and metaphors. I will give you a couple of examples just to get your brain thinking, but hopefully you've had a good go at this yourself. So the hot room was a furnace maybe, or a sauna. Those are places that are really hot. Her face was as red as and you may have heard of this as a sort of a phrase. So this simile could be, her face was as red as a tomato, as red as a letterbox. I'm sure you can come up with lots of ideas for that one. The graceful dancer was maybe a swan or a fairy. His father shouted as loudly as a foghorn or storm, for another simile. Mrs. Brown ran along the road like maybe a cheetah or a leopard, so something that's really fast. His knowledge was as valuable as gold or diamonds. The soldier moved as quickly as a bullet or a tiger. The forest was as dark as night or a black hole. And the last one, bit of metaphoric word usage down the bottom, her tall uncle was a skyscraper or a mountain. Guys, I hope you were able to fill those in, but do please send us examples of what you've done. We'd love to see it. Okay, we're going to move on to our last little part of this lesson, and we need to be on page 22, and we're going to have a look at abbreviations and acronyms. So let's have a look first of all at the abbreviations. Hopefully these are all fairly straightforward. So what you know with an abbreviation, and the opposite of an abbreviation to an acronym, acronyms generally have capital letters, so or all uppercase letters, whereas with these they're not all uppercase. So it is just a case they've been shortened. That's really what an abbreviation is. It's a shortened version of the word, and a lot of people do this to save time, but also it's a lot quicker to write down, particularly in things like maths. When you're using things like centimetres, you wouldn't write centimetres out in full. You just put cm, or you might put m for metres, or I don't know, m for millimetres. There's lots of them, aren't there? You could put km for kilometers. So these are just all shortened versions of those particular words. So we've just written them out in full. So we've got approximately, dep for department, centimetres we've really talked about. We do say, of course, 60 pence, don't we? And a lot of these words we say the word, but obviously we shorten it. So we say the fresh juicy apple only costs 60 pence. Well, you say 60 pence, but of course you just use a p to represent pence. Versus, that's a very common thing when you've got football teams playing each other. Versus, so you put a V, so the V indicates verses. You don't write verses out in full. Avenue, you've probably seen before in an address. Professor, so prof. Okay, and then we've got mount as a shortened version for MT is a shortened version of mount. And then we've got ounces, and you may have well seen that on a recipe maybe before. OZ. Maybe you could have a think of some of your own abbreviations that you know. Maybe send them to us, that would be lovely. Okay, now have a look at some acronyms and abbreviations. Sorry, I won't reveal that just yet. So what do you have to do here? You have to write down whether the word in bold is an acronym or an abbreviated word. So for example, my aunt Michaela works for the BBC. Well, that's an acronym because BBC stands for something else. So it's really important that you make sure that you know what these acronyms stand for as well. So let's just have a little look down through. Remember that letters in acronyms stand for words that are usually in uppercase. So let's have a little look and see whether you managed to get all of those. So you just needed to write whether it was an abbreviation or an acronym. So on the first one, we've got an abbreviation that's of course for limited. So hopefully you knew that one. And then we've got an acronym for NASA, which is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, but it is in capitals, so that makes it an acronym, not an abbreviation. And then we've got United, of course, Junior, Maximum, and then we've got another acronym here, which is FIFA. And what does FIFA stand for? Well, it's the Federation of International de Football Association. So that's in capitals again. And then we've got CO, and then CO stands for company. That's an abbreviation for company. And then AUG, we often see that, don't we, with our months of the year. So that would stand for August. And then the last one is NATO, and it's an acronym. So you've got 3 acronyms, and that stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Hopefully, guys, you managed to get 9 out of 9 there on those. They, again, can be good fun to try and find and hunt down. Maybe make a list of abbreviated words and acronyms. And they're always quite useful to know, particularly for things like quizzes and things. But maybe in the 11 plus it may crop up. You never know. So it is a good idea to know the difference between acronyms and abbreviations. Just a last little slide here, just to remind you what you need to do for your homework. So I'd ask you please to complete the You Must task for the English. So you need to do the synonyms and antonyms, that's super important. Spotting and understanding devices, 24 and 25. And then there's a lovely little glossary that we would like you to revise the keywords for on page 78. So quite a bit to cover off. There'll obviously be a separate video that will talk you through all of the maths lessons, but for your homework, for your maths, you can see there what you need to do. But obviously don't do that until you've had your lesson or you've been through this video. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you found it useful, and we look forward to seeing you in our live sessions. Take care. Bye.